Amani had spent weeks planning her 30th birthday. She wanted it to be special, her first real celebration after years of living in her younger sister Tasha's shadow. The restaurant looked perfect. Fairy lights twinkled, the cake shimmered gold, and soft music filled the air. Everything was ready. She looked beautiful in her gold dress, her heart full of hope. But as the clock struck 8, the room stayed empty. Not a single guest arrived. Her phone didn't buzz, no messages, no calls, just silence. At first, she thought maybe everyone was running late. She kept checking her phone, forcing a smile every time a waiter passed by. Minutes turned to hours. The candles melted, the food went cold, and her chest tightened with confusion and hurt. Then came the truth, the one that broke her heart. Her mother, Mama Tinu, had sent out different invitations. Not for Amani's 30th, but for Princess Tasha's birthday tea. And worse, it was happening at the exact same time. Amani opened social media and saw the posts, her family, her friends, everyone laughing at Tasha's party. Her mother hugging Tasha, her father smiling proudly, even her ex standing in the background. Her hands shook as she scrolled, her eyes burning. It wasn't a mistake. It was deliberate. Her mother had chosen her sister again. The restaurant around her sparkled like a cruel joke, every empty chair reminding her that she had been forgotten, on her own birthday. Amani's hands shook as she scrolled through her phone. Her screen lit up with photos, videos, and stories that made her heart sink. Her sister's surprise party was everywhere, trending, smiling faces, happy captions. There was her mother, Mama Tinu, holding Tasha close with a proud smile. The caption read, "Our little girl turns 21, family over everything." Family over everything. The words hit like a slap. Amani blinked at them, trying to make sense of it. Her little sister wasn't a child anymore, she was a grown woman, yet her mother had somehow made her the center of attention again. In the pictures, Amani saw the people she'd invited, her friends, her cousins, even her co-workers, all standing in that crowded hall decorated with pink balloons and glitter. She noticed her father in none of the photos. He was probably somewhere quiet, pretending not to notice the storm Mama Tinu had created. But what made her chest tighten the most was the one face she didn't expect to see, her ex-boyfriend, smiling in the background, holding a glass of champagne like he belonged there. Her throat went dry. Every picture felt like a stab. Every "Happy birthday Tasha" comment burned a little deeper. She tried to tell herself it was just a mistake, that maybe her mother had gotten confused, but deep down she knew better. Her mother never made mistakes like this. This was planned. It was her way of saying what she had always said with her actions, "Amani, you don't get to shine in this family." Amani thought about all the times she had stayed quiet, all the birthdays where she had let Tasha take the spotlight, all the small ways she'd been told to understand and be mature. She remembered being 12 and giving up her dance recital so her sister could perform instead. She remembered working extra shifts to help buy Tasha's graduation dress. She had always been the calm one, the helper, the one who never asked for too much. But this time, it was different. This time, she had dared to celebrate herself, and her mother had punished her for it. Her phone kept buzzing with new posts. Videos showed her mother raising a toast to Tasha, calling her the pride of our family. Laughter filled the background. Someone even joked, "Amani who?" and the crowd roared. That was when the tears finally came, hot and silent. She wasn't crying just because they forgot her, she was crying because they didn't forget. They chose not to come. In that empty restaurant filled with fading lights and untouched food, Amani sat still, phone in hand, her heart breaking in slow motion. She had been erased from her own story, replaced by the sister who had always taken everything without even asking. The betrayal wasn't an accident. It was a message, loud and clear, you don't belong in the spotlight. You never will. But deep inside, beneath the hurt, something else was waking up, a quiet fire that whispered, "Watch me." By midnight, Amani sat alone in the empty restaurant. The music had stopped, the waiters had cleaned around her, and the candles burned low, their light flickering against the gold decorations she had once been so proud of. The food sat untouched, the cake half melted, and her phone lay face down on the table, still silent. For hours she had waited, hoping someone might call, might show up, might remember. But no one came. The pain in her chest had stopped feeling sharp, it had turned into something heavy, something she couldn't name. She looked around at the place she had decorated with love, the same place she thought would be filled with laughter and dancing. Now it looked like a stage after the show had ended, empty and cold. Amani could almost hear her mother's voice in her head, the one that used to cut her down so easily. "You're too quiet, Amani. Too simple. Too average to be noticed." She had heard those words her whole life, said with a smile that made them sting even more. And tonight, her mother had proved it once again, by erasing her birthday completely, by showing her that she didn't matter, not even on her own day. Tears blurred her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. Crying felt pointless now. Something inside her shifted, a mix of anger, exhaustion, and power. For the first time, she didn't want to beg for love or attention. She wanted to take it. She wanted to show them, her mother, her sister, everyone, that she was more than what they said she was. She took a deep breath, wiped her face, and reached for her phone. At first, her hands trembled. She opened her camera app, switched to Go Live, and stared at her reflection on the screen. The woman looking back at her didn't look weak. She looked calm. She looked done. She pressed the button and started talking. Her voice was steady, quiet but powerful. She didn't shout or curse. She just told the truth. She talked about how she had spent her life being second to her sister, how her mother had sent everyone to a different party, how she had sat alone in a room meant for celebration. She showed the empty tables, the candles, the cake no one touched. "I spent years trying to be enough," she said softly, "but maybe I was just in the wrong crowd." People started joining the live. Comments poured in, messages of shock and sympathy filling the screen. But Amani didn't read them. She wasn't doing this for attention, she was doing it to free herself. When she finally ended the video, she felt something she hadn't felt all night, peace. The pain was still there, but it no longer controlled her. She looked around the empty restaurant one last time, smiled sadly, and whispered to herself, "They didn't see me tonight. But they will." By morning, Amani's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Messages, notifications, and calls poured in like a storm. Her video had gone viral overnight. Millions of people had watched it, the calm, honest story of a woman left alone on her own birthday. Strangers from all over the world flooded her comments with love and support. Some wrote, "You didn't deserve that, Amani." Others said, "We see you now." People started sharing her video everywhere. Within hours, #AmaniDeservesBetter was the #1 trend across Africa. Then came the shockwave. Someone dug up screenshots of the fake invitations her mother had sent, one for Amani's birthday, and another for Princess Tasha's birthday tea. The times were identical. The proof was right there in black and white. People were furious. Tweets, TikToks, and Instagram posts called out the cruelty and favoritism. News blogs picked up the story, calling it the birthday betrayal that broke the internet. Amani woke up to thousands of messages, not just from ordinary people but from brands and influencers. Companies wanted to collaborate with her. Talk shows invited her to speak. She had spent her whole life trying to be seen, and now, the whole world couldn't look away. Her calm honesty, the way she told her story without anger, made people admire her even more. Everyone called her the girl who turned heartbreak into strength. Meanwhile, her mother was still pretending everything was fine. Mama Tinu kept posting smiling family pictures with Tasha, acting like nothing had happened. But the internet was already one step ahead. People compared the dates, the outfits, and even the background decor. Commenters filled her posts with questions: where was Amani, and did you really skip your daughter's birthday? The image of the perfect family started to crack. Tasha's fans turned quiet too. Old posts of her showing off gifts and expensive trips resurfaced with harsh captions like, "All that, but no heart." The internet began to see what Amani had lived with her whole life: the favoritism, the silence, the constant dismissal. For once, Amani didn't have to explain herself. The truth was doing the work for her. As the views kept climbing, Amani sat on her bed, phone in hand, overwhelmed. She didn't expect fame. She just wanted to be heard. But now, people were calling her an inspiration. Some sent her flowers, some sent letters saying her story gave them courage to walk away from toxic families too. For the first time, Amani felt seen, not for her pain, but for her strength. Her mother's carefully built reputation was falling apart, and Amani didn't even have to lift a finger. The same world that once ignored her was now standing behind her. The balance had shifted, and for the first time in her life, Amani held the power. 2 weeks later, Amani stood in front of her parents' mansion, the same place that had once felt like home but now felt like a stage. Her heart beat fast, but her face was calm. She had decided this moment would not break her, it would define her. Quietly, she stepped out of the car. A few reporters and vloggers followed at a distance, their cameras ready. The woman the world had come to admire, the one from the viral, empty birthday, video, was about to face the very people who had caused her pain. She wore the same golden gown she had worn that lonely night. It shimmered under the afternoon sun, catching every eye. The gown that no one had seen before, that no one had complimented, was finally being noticed. Neighbors peeked through their windows, curious. Some of the same family friends who had ignored her messages 2 weeks ago now stood at the gate, whispering and watching. When Amani walked into the house, her mother was waiting in the living room, arms crossed, eyes cold. Mama Tinu didn't waste a second. "You embarrassed us online," she snapped. "Do you have any idea how much damage you've done to this family's name?" Her voice trembled with anger, but Amani didn't respond right away. She just stood there, silent, letting her mother's words hang in the air. Then, slowly, she pulled an envelope from her bag and placed it on the glass table between them. Her mother frowned. "What's this supposed to be?" Amani smiled faintly. "That," she said softly, "is a check. Enough to cover Tasha's tuition, your mortgage, and every debt you've been hiding from Dad." Mama Tinu's expression changed, surprise, confusion, then guilt. Amani looked her straight in the eye and continued, "Don't worry, Mama. Consider this my last family contribution." For a long moment, no one spoke. The only sound in the room was the quiet hum of the air conditioner. Her father appeared in the hallway, hesitant, watching the scene unfold. Tasha stood near the staircase, frozen, her perfect image finally cracking. Her mother tried to regain control. "You think money fixes everything?" she said sharply. Amani shook her head. "No. I just wanted to make sure you'd never say I owed this family anything." Her tone was calm, steady, the tone of someone who had already let go. "You took my day, my peace, and my love, but you can't take my future." She turned to leave, the cameras catching every moment. The gold fabric of her dress flowed behind her like light. Her mother called her name, but Amani didn't stop. She opened the door and stepped into the sunlight, free and unbothered. Outside, reporters whispered, clicking photos, recording her every move. But Amani didn't smile for them. She wasn't doing it for fame anymore. She was doing it for closure. And as she walked down the steps of the house that had once made her feel small, she knew she'd never have to come back again. As Amani reached the front door, the room behind her stayed silent. Her heels clicked softly against the marble floor, echoing through the house that had once made her feel invisible. Her mother stood frozen by the table, her father still by the hallway, and Tasha stared down at her phone, pretending not to care. But the truth was, everyone in that room knew something had shifted forever. Amani wasn't the quiet, forgotten daughter anymore, she was the one they all had to face. Just as she was about to step outside, her father spoke in a low voice, almost a whisper. "You've changed, Amani." She stopped, her hand resting on the door handle. For a moment, she didn't turn around. Then, slowly, she looked over her shoulder and said clearly, "No, Daddy. I finally stopped begging to be loved." The words hung in the air, sharp and final. The cameras caught it perfectly, the calm strength in her voice, the tears her mother tried to hide, the regret flickering across her father's face. It was a line that would soon circle the internet, replayed over and over as millions of people watched that clip and whispered, "That's the moment she won." Within hours, the video spread everywhere. News outlets used it as a headline. Motivational speakers quoted her words. Her mother's polished image, the proud matriarch always preaching, family first, began to fall apart. People saw through it now. The same social media users who once admired Mama Tinu's perfect family post started calling her a manipulator, a hypocrite, a woman who broke her own daughter to keep another one shining. Tasha's world collapsed too. The brand deals that once came so easily vanished. Companies pulled back, not wanting to be linked to the sister who stole a birthday. Her followers dropped overnight, and every post she made was met with comments asking about Amani. The internet had turned, and this time, there was no coming back. But Amani didn't waste her energy celebrating their downfall. She focused on herself. Invitations poured in, podcasts, talk shows, women's conferences. Everyone wanted to hear from the woman who turned pain into purpose. She spoke about self-worth, about finding power in silence, about letting go of people who only loved you when it was convenient. Her calm, grounded way of speaking made people listen. She didn't act like a celebrity, she spoke like someone who had lived through the storm and learned to walk calmly in the rain. Her story wasn't just viral anymore, it was becoming a movement. People started sharing their own stories of family betrayal and healing under the hashtag Amani deserves better. She read some of them at night, smiling quietly. Amani hadn't planned to become an icon or a symbol. She just wanted peace. But life had given her more than that, it had given her power. And as she looked at the glowing city skyline from her hotel window that night, she whispered to herself, "They finally see me. But more importantly, I see myself." Months passed, and Amani's life had changed completely. The same woman who once sat alone in a quiet restaurant was now a name people recognized everywhere. Her story had inspired millions. Brands worked with her, universities invited her to speak, and magazines called her the face of resilience. But Amani stayed humble. She never bragged or showed off. She simply kept doing what she loved, helping women find confidence after heartbreak and betrayal. One bright evening, a grand gala was held in the city to celebrate women in leadership. The event was filled with powerful women, business icons, and media personalities. The red carpet sparkled, cameras flashed, and people whispered excitedly about the keynote speaker, Amani. She arrived dressed in an elegant white gown that glowed softly under the lights. Her calm smile, graceful walk, and quiet confidence turned every head in the room. When it was time for her to speak, she walked to the stage as the crowd applauded. The host introduced her as a woman who turned pain into purpose. The lights dimmed slightly, and the room grew silent as Amani took the microphone. She looked around the hall, scanning the faces, and then she saw them. Sitting at the very back, uninvited but unable to stay away, were her parents. Her father looked nervous, her mother sat stiff, her hands clutched together. For a brief second, their eyes met. Amani didn't look away. She smiled gently, not out of anger or pride, but peace. Then she turned back to the audience and began her speech. "My life began the day my party was empty," she said clearly, her voice calm and strong. Because that was the day I realized I didn't need a crowd to be seen. The audience gasped softly, and then applause filled the room. Some people stood, clapping loudly. Amani continued, sharing how failure and betrayal had shaped her strength, how silence had taught her to listen to herself, and how losing love had helped her find purpose. She spoke with honesty and warmth, her words reaching deep into the hearts of everyone listening. In the back row, Mama Tinu's eyes filled with tears. But they weren't tears of pride. They were tears of regret, the kind that sting when you realize you broke something you can never fix. She reached for her husband's hand, but he didn't move. They both sat quietly, watching the daughter they had once ignored now standing in front of hundreds, shining brighter than ever. When Amani finished, the hall erupted again in applause. Reporters stood up to capture the moment, flashes lighting the room like stars. Amani smiled, thanked the crowd, and stepped away from the microphone. As she walked off the stage, she didn't look back at her parents. She didn't need to. That moment wasn't for them anymore. It was for her, the woman who had learned that sometimes, being unseen is the first step to being unforgettable. As the lights dimmed and the applause faded, Amani stood quietly at the side of the stage, her heart steady and full. She glanced down at her wrist, where a small gold bracelet caught the light. It was the one her late grandmother had given her years ago, engraved with the words, "Your worth is not up for debate." She ran her fingers over the inscription and smiled. Those words used to confuse her when she was younger, but now, after everything, they made perfect sense. The same emptiness that once broke her, the silence of that empty restaurant, the loneliness that made her cry, had created room for everything she truly deserved. She no longer needed to chase love or beg to be seen. The world saw her now, but more importantly, she saw herself clearly for the first time. Her story, once called The Forgotten Birthday, had become something bigger. It wasn't just a viral moment, it was a message to everyone who had ever felt overlooked or unloved. Her mother and sister had tried to reach out, posting public apologies online, hoping to fix their image. But Amani never responded. She didn't block them or curse them, she just moved on. Her silence spoke louder than any words could. While they scrambled to explain, she kept building, kept shining. As she stepped out of the venue that night, the cool air touched her face. She looked up at the city lights and whispered a quiet thank you, not to her family, but to herself. Because now she knew that sometimes, the best revenge isn't anger or payback. It's peace. It's success. It's living a life so full that the people who once ignored you can only watch in silence.